Clad in adamantium, Imperial Knights are the ancient defenders of the Imperium. These towering war machines turn the tides of battle wherever they appear, wielding the most powerful weapons known to mankind. In this painting guide, we'll be painting an Imperial Knight Defender of House Terran, including some great tips and tricks to add to all their livery and bring your knights to life. Let's get started. All the paints I'm using are on screen now, but these are just the ones that I've chosen, so feel free to switch these out for whatever you want. And it's also a list of all the brushes I'm using. Same again here, use whatever is right for you. So before we get started, it's worth mentioning that I've broken the knight up into sub-assemblies. I've got the skeleton here and also all the armor panels, so I can paint them separately. This is what makes painting the knights so fun and easy to paint. Because we've left all those armor panels off, the skeleton can just be sprayed Leadbelcher, which makes it pretty much already done. For all the other panels, I'm using Chaos Black, except for this one here, the faceplate and also the banner, which I'm using Wraithbone for, as then we don't have to paint that white colour later. So even though we've already sprayed the skeleton section here in Leadbelcher, I am going to paint the whole thing with Leadbelcher from the pot as well. This may seem a little strange considering it's already silver, but the spray and the pot have slightly different finishes, so it's worth doing now. Also, there might be some areas that the spray may have missed, so we can paint those now. With that done and dry, I'm going to shade the entire exoskeleton with Nuln Oil. This can be really messy, so make sure you protect your work surface. I've got a cutting mat, but some newspaper or some kitchen towel will be absolutely fine as well. Now this is a really big model, so it's going to take a long time to dry. If that's okay, just leave it to the side for a bit, come back in a couple hours and move on to the next step. With it fully dry and ready, now we can add a bit more visual interest to the pistons using Agrax Earthshade. Apply this wherever you want it, and it's just going to add an extra colour into the mix, which will be way more visually interesting. And with that done, make sure the whole model is completely dry for the next step. Next, I'm going to dry brush the whole thing using Stormhost Silver. You can use any bright silver you want here, but this is the brightest out of the bunch, and I think looks really nice. Take your time and work your way across the whole model. Apply it gently at first, as you can always go back and add more if you want to. With that done, I'm now using Abaddon Black. I'm using this time to base coat any cables across the exoskeleton and also the lenses. So now we can move on to painting all of the blue areas. So for all the sub-assembly armor panels, I'm using Kantor Blue. There's also some parts on the exoskeleton that we need to pick out here, like this panel above the head and the feet as well. Oh, and the banner as well, and these parts on the weapons too. You will need a couple thin layers here, maybe even 3 on the really large areas like the hull. With that done, I'm moving on now to Khorne Red to base coat all the red parts. So that's the back section of each shoulder pad and also the inside section of this armor panel here at the bottom of the legs. I'm also using this time to base coat any red wax for the purity seals, but you don't have to do that if there's none on your model. Once again, I'm applying this in a couple thin layers and I'm switching between a large and small brush where I need to. Now it's time to paint all the gold trim and any other areas that you want to be gold, like the Aquila heads on the exoskeleton. For this, I'm using Runelord Brass, and I'll be applying 3 thin layers to each area. Take your time and keep the paint thin and be as careful as you can not to get any of this onto the blue, red or silver details. With that done, I'm moving on to another metallic now. I'm using Warplock Bronze for any extra details across the exoskeleton, weapon details and also that massive void shield on top of the carapace. You can pick out as little or as many areas with this as you want to. It's a really nice colour that I don't get to use all that often, so it's really fun that I've managed to fit it into this scheme. With that finished, I'm now going to base coat the chest detail using Corax White. Don't worry about painting the writing or anything on it yet, there's a perfect transfer in the box that I'll be using later. Now it's time for some recess shading, and for that I'm using Nuln Oil to recess all the blue and red details. Now this will take some time, but it will give you a much neater look than applying an all-over shade would. If that's something you'd rather do, by all means go ahead, but I think the armor panels will look way nicer this way. Take your time and remember that you can always neaten up any mistakes if you want to. With the red and blue details all recess shaded, I'm also going to recess shade the Warplock Bronze areas, but you can also apply this all over if you want to. Speaking of which, I am going to apply it all over the Corax White, but I am mixing in some Lamia Medium first just to make it a little more subtle. With that done, I'm going to shade all the gold areas with Reichland Flesh Shade. You may need to switch to a smaller brush for the smaller trim like on the faceplate. If you're struggling to hold some of the sub-assembly parts while you're painting them, you can go ahead and stick those to the knight now if you want to. With that shade done, now it's time to add some highlight. The first highlight we're going to add is Altdorf Blue, and I'm going to use this to edge highlight all the blue areas. Now you could instead apply this with a dry brush or even use some sponge from a carry case to dab this on instead, but it's totally up to you. Edge highlighting will give you the cleanest results, but if that's not what you're after, that's totally fine. The large sections like the carapace part here are great for dry brushing as well, so I find that using a mix of both is a really good idea. With the blue fully highlighted, I'm using Wazdakka Red to highlight all the red areas. There's not actually that many of these, but take your time regardless and it will look great. Now it's time to go back to Leadbelcher to base coat any of the remaining silver details that we need to. So there's loads of these little silver details and ladder parts on the carapace that I'm base coating now. And once you've base coated those, if you want to, you can shade them with Nuln Oil. With that done, I'm going to highlight all the metallic details now using Stormhost Silver. Now the exoskeleton has already been highlighted, so I'll skip that part, but all the weapons and extra details like this big void shield can be highlighted now. You can edge highlight this, or you can apply a dry brush. It's totally up to you which you prefer. At this point, we can also pick out all the rivets across the model too. This will take some time, but it will look great. And with that done, we're making some real progress with the knight now. Next, I'm going to start painting all those lenses across the model. I'm going to be painting them green to match the box art, but you could use any colour you want for this. It's totally up to you. So before we get started, just make sure all the lenses are fully black first. And then with that done, start painting Caliban Green in the bottom third, like so. And then when that's totally dry, apply Warpstone Glow within the Caliban Green. Basically, you want some of that Caliban Green showing between that and the black. And then finally, add a small amount of Moot Green in the corner. A small amount goes a really long way, so you really don't need that much. And then to create the impression of light reflecting, apply a tiny dot of Corax White in the opposite corner. You could apply 2 dots, 3 dots, or just one big one. It's totally up to you. And while we've got Corax White on the palette, base coat all the plasma coils ready for some contrast paint. You will need 3 thin layers of this. And then with that done, to paint all the plasma coils, I'm using Frostheart. You could use a different blue contrast paint if you wanted to, like a thematic blue. It's totally up to you. With that done, the knight is really coming along now, with only a few more details left to paint. The main one being that huge checkered pattern that we see on the shoulder pad. The Knights of House Terran all have different patterns on their shoulder pad to signify which knight they are. In this case, we're doing a checkered pattern, but if that's a bit too complex for you or a bit too daunting, you can just do like 2 vertical lines, 2 horizontal lines. There's loads of different examples and they all work fine. So use your own judgment, it's your call. But before we get started here, I'm going to base coat the entire area using Wraithbone from the pot. Now you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I would recommend it. The finish in the pot and the spray is ever so slightly different, so if you want to tidy up any mistakes later, it's really important that we do this now. With that done, you can use this time to base coat any purity seals if there are any on your model. So with that done, now it's time to make the pattern that we want using some masking tape. So as I said a minute ago, I'm doing a checkered pattern, but if you don't want to, you can do something completely different. There's loads of different Terran designs that you can use on your knight. But to achieve a checkered pattern, all we need to do is lay out the masking tape like so. So here I've got some 7mm masking tape. You could use a bigger size or a smaller size if you want to. Firstly, I'm laying it out like so, applying each piece next to each other. And then I'm removing every other piece of masking tape so we have perfectly even lines. With that done, I'm doing the exact same thing but applying it horizontally this time. And then when I've removed the masking tape a second time, you can see I've got these small squares that are left. Now I'm going to go ahead and spray this with Chaos Black. You can use Abaddon Black instead from the pot, but I find that it's way neater if you use a spray can. Now removing the masking tape, we can see we've got some really nice neat squares. Now this part is really important to get right or it won't give you the effect that you want. So I'm laying the masking tape over the black squares that we just painted. This will create the exact same grid that we just had, but this time in a different place. Then I'm going to go spray that again using Chaos Black, and then when we come back and take the masking tape off, we can see we've got a really nice checkered pattern. Take your time with this and don't overthink it too much. Trust me, it's much easier than it seems. And remember, once again, if checkered pattern isn't for you, you could do any design that you wanted to. At this point, you can use Abaddon Black to tidy up any areas where the spray might have not gone too right, and you can use Wraithbone to tidy up any of the Wraithbone areas as well, and even create some battle damage like so. The opposite knee pad also needs to be painted in the same pattern as the shoulder pad. Now this is a bit small to use masking tape on, so instead you will have to freehand this area. Just take your time and be as careful as you can, and remember you can always fix up any mistakes if you think you need to. Start by blocking in all the vertical lines, and then add the horizontal lines afterwards. You can use a paintbrush or a pencil for this if you want to. Then block in every other square until you're left with a nice pattern that you're happy with. And while you've got Abaddon Black on the palette, you can also use this time to paint any of the weapon casings across the model if you want to. I don't think we really need to, I think the model looks great without it, but if you want to, now is the time. Now at the moment, all the checkered pattern looks a bit too white and we want it to be a bit more of a bony colour. So I'm going to mix some Skeleton Horde with some Lamia Medium and apply it all over each area to make it a bit warmer and a bit more like a bone colour. On the really large shoulder pads, brush downwards towards the bottom of it to make the colour darker towards the bottom. Apply loads of paint at once and then soak up any excess if you need to. I'm also going to apply this to all the purity seals to make them a bit darker as well. And with that done, all that's left is to paint the other details on the shoulder pad like the red and the trim. And now is a really exciting part because it's time to reassemble the knight. It's important to remember here that we have to use super glue instead of plastic glue because we already have paint on the model. Be as careful as you can and slowly apply each panel back to the knight. This is such an exciting part as we see the knight come together and all our hard work finally paying off. And there we go, the knight is fully assembled, and wow, how awesome does that look. But all those flat panels look a little bit bare, and that's because they're missing some crucial transfers. There are so many awesome transfers on the transfer sheet and loads of different ones depending on what knight house you're using. We're obviously using Knight Terran, so we're going to focus on this column here and use all of the right transfers. If we look at this diagram here, there's actually some correct placement and also some other areas where we're more free to be creative. So in all of the red areas, we need to apply an Imperial insignia. And then all of these blue areas here have the house symbol instead. So some key areas like the shoulder pad and the tilt shield and also all of the outer plating all have these Terran symbols on. But where you have room to be creative is with some of the battle honours and warning symbols. You can add as many as you want on this banner here and also any warning symbols that you want across the whole model. These really small transfers go a long way at making your model look way more set in the universe and alive. Before you apply your transfers, you may want to apply Ardcoat, which is a gloss varnish. This will give a much smoother surface for the transfers to adhere to, and don't worry about it being too shiny because afterwards we can apply Lamia Medium to lock the transfers in place and also matte down the surface. And there we go, the knight is pretty much complete. All that's left is that base. Before we get painting it, let's add some battlefield trophies. You can never have too many skulls on a base, so I'm going to dot around all these different skulls until I'm happy. Then I'm going to base coat them all with Wraithbone. Now I'm going to add sterling mud all over the base. You can use a different texture paint if you want to, but I find this one works great. And I'm actually mixing in some Armageddon dust too while it's wet on the base to make a variety of different tones. With that done and totally dry, I'm shading it all with Agrax Earthshade, but Nuln Oil would also work here. This is another really messy stage, so make sure to keep your workstation clean and protected. Once the area is completely dry, and it does need to be completely dry, I'm dry brushing the entire thing using Screaming Skull. This is a paint that can be dry brushed over pretty much everything, so it's perfect for this. With that done, all that's left is to paint the base rim with Steel Legion Drab, and then apply some grass tufts. It's worth mentioning at this point you can actually cut down the tufts to make a variety of different sizes if you want to. Just use your trusty pair of clippers and you might surprise yourself with how cool this looks. And with the base done, this Imperial Knight Defender of House Terran is ready to stomp its way onto the battlefield and blast the enemies of the Imperium to smithereens. Thanks for tuning in to this paint guide. Painting huge models like this is always a colossal amount of fun. Well, that's all from me. In the meantime, if you are looking for more tutorials, tips and tricks, you can check out some of the other videos on the Warhammer YouTube channel, or alternatively, you can head to a Warhammer store where our amazing staff are always happy to help. Thanks again for watching, see you next time, bye bye!